So Lightning Web Component is a modern UI framework developed by Salesforce for building fast, reusable, responsive application on Salesforce platform. So if anybody asks you about what is LWC, you need to tell about this definition. Okay, అర్థమవుతుందా? So what is LWC? LWC is nothing but Lightning Web Components. Okay. So Lightning Web Component is a modern UI framework. So this is the latest UI framework which follows the web standards like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and ES6 plus JavaScript. Okay. So these are all belongs to latest web technologies. Okay. HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So the background here is why we are Salesforce introduced LWC. Okay. Earlier, when Salesforce was started, okay, we have initially Visual Force pages, Visual Force pages. Okay. And then later, so to improve Visual Force performance, okay, UI performance, later Salesforce introduced Aura component. Aura component. Okay. So in this Aura components also there are some limitations. Okay. So in the Aura components also there are limitations. Then Salesforce again introduced new technology, that new UI framework, that is called LWC. Okay, LWC. LWC stands for Lightning Web Components. Lightning Web Components. Okay. So initially when Salesforce was introduced, at the time we have Visual Force pages. Later, so to the extension of Visual Force pages for better performance, so Salesforce introduced another UI technology, that is called Aura components. Okay. So this Aura component functionality was in inbuilt Salesforce. Okay. That entire framework related to Salesforce itself. Okay. So later, by using these Aura components while implementing the developer, so there are some limitation within the Aura components. To overcome that, okay, limitations, again Salesforce introduced new web technology, new user interface. New technology called LWC, Lightning Web Components. So this is entirely based on standard web technologies. Okay. So here, what is LWC is a what is LWC? Okay. LWC is nothing. Lightning Web Component is a modern UI. It is a modern UI framework. LWC is a modern UI framework. Okay. So by using this modern UI framework, okay, we can able to build. So what is the purpose of introducing this LWC? So for building faster, reusable, reusable and responsive applications, and responsive application within the Salesforce. Okay. By using this LWC, we can able to build faster, okay, and reusable components as well as responsive application. Okay, so if you want to, by using this LWC, we can able to build faster application. Whether when compared to ARA, we can able to build easily and faster. Okay, and the response also very good. Okay, when you compare with ARA components. Okay, that is the purpose of introducing LWC. It is a modern UI framework which is developed by Salesforce for building faster, reusable, responsive application within the Salesforce platform. Okay. So if anyone asks in interview what is LWC, then you need to say LWC is nothing but Lightning Web Component. It is a modern UI framework which is developed by Salesforce for building a faster, reusable, and responsive application within the Salesforce platform. Okay, so it follows the it follows the standard web technologies like standard web technologies is like HTML, HTML, JavaScript, JavaScript, CSS, okay, like web components and ES, ES6, ES6 plus, okay. So these are all the web technologies which includes in the within the LWC, okay, ES6, Java, script. So it follows the standard web technologies like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, web components, ES6, JavaScript. Okay, and then what is LWC? Now, why Salesforce introduced LWC? Why Salesforce introduced LWC? Okay, so to overcome the why Salesforce introduced LWC? So this is one question, right? Already we have ARA components. Then what is the use of LWC? So to overcome the limitations of ARA component, Salesforce introduced this LWC technology. Okay, to overcome the to overcome the to overcome the to overcome the ARA component limitations. Okay, to overcome the ARA component limitations, Salesforce introduced LWC concept. Okay, LWC technology to overcome the ARA component limitation. What are all the limitations within the ARA component when you are using? Okay, what are the limitations? The ARA component limitations. So here one is framework overhead. Framework overhead. So what is meaning by framework overhead? Okay, uh, this means, for example, if you write a single code of line, okay, so it will load the entire ARA framework. In backend, it needs to do some other code, extra code it needs to run in order to validate your single line of code. Okay, so it will run those commands in the background. So that is the meaning of framework overhead. Okay, that is called framework overhead. So another one would be slow performance. Slow performance. Slow performance and difficult difficult debugging. So if you want to debug the ARA component code, it is very difficult. Okay, difficult debugging. And then fourth one is, so for less code you need to write a multiple, for a single task you need to write a multiple, for a single task you need to write multiple lines of code, multiple lines of code. Simple task, simple, a simple task you need to write a multiple lines of code. And framework overhead, slow performance, difficult debugging. Okay, difficult debugging. For a simple task you need to write a multiple lines of code. Okay, and another one would be more code, simple, slower performance, complex syntax. Okay, that is one of the bigger limitation. So here complex, so we cannot able to remember the syntax easily. Okay, syntax. Okay, so because of these limitations, uh, Salesforce introduced new technology called LWC. Okay, so imagine, for example, so while creating a LWC component, it will have, అర్థమైందా, why Salesforce introduced LWC to overcome the ARA component limitations. What are all the limitations of ARA component? Framework overhead, slow performance, difficult debugging. For simple tasks, you need to write a multiple lines of code and complex syntaxes. Okay, so to overcome these limitations in ARA, Salesforce introduced LWC to the developers. Okay, so to overcome these scenarios, for faster, reusable, better performance application, Salesforce introduced LWC concept, Lightning Web Component. So it will work based on the standard web technologies like HTML, okay, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, ES6 plus JavaScript. Okay, so those are all the web technologies, and also it will be familiar with web technology, as well as it won't take much time. Okay, it will take less time to load the components and get the response from the server. All these things will be faster when compared to ARA component. Okay, అర్థమైందా? So And then what are all the advantages of LWC? So here we have a framework, right, overhead. So faster performance, uses modern JavaScript. Okay, it uses modern JavaScript, easy to learn for web developers. So if anyone who is well known about HTML, JavaScript, they can able to easily write the LWC component. So better debugging and lightweight framework. So this is not that much of overhead when compared to ARA component. And better browser support and reusable components, and it provides the lightning web security, improve the, and security, in terms of security also it will be very good. Okay, so these are all the advantages: faster performance, uses modern JavaScript, easy to learn for web developers, better debugging, lightweight framework, better browser support, reusable components, improved security with lightning web security. Okay, so here in our LWC, what are all the files? So when you create a LWC component, LWC component, so it will create a with the following files. Okay, by default, when you create LWC component, below files are created in the LWC bundle. Okay, so what it will create, for example, let's take a hello world component name. LWC component name hello world. So for this one, for this component, what it will create, so hello world dot HTML, hello world dot JS, hello world dot meta XML file, XML hello world dot meta XML. So apart from this, if required, if required, it will create a, you can add CSS also. Okay, you can add CSS. Okay, so by default these are all the things. Imagine how. So in real time example, let's take an example of house. Okay, నువ్వు బిల్డింగ్ ని కట్టడానికి నీ ప్లాన్స్ ఏంటి? సో నీ బిల్డింగ్ ని ఎలాగ, ఒక ఇల్లుని కట్టాలనుకుంటే నువ్వు ఏమేమి ఆలోచిస్తావు? కెన్ యూ ఇమాజిన్? కెన్ ఎనీవన్ టెల్? ఆ ఇల్లు స్ట్రక్చర్ ఎలా ఉండాలో తెలుసుకుంటావు కదా, ఐ మీన్ గోడలు ఎలా ఉండాలో, డిజైన్ ఎలా ఉండాలనేది. ఓకే, హౌస్లో లెట్స్ టేక్ ఏ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఆఫ్ హౌస్, ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఆఫ్ హౌస్. ఓకే, హౌస్ కన్స్ట్రక్షన్ చేయాలనుకుంటున్నావు. సో ఫస్ట్ ఏం చేయాలనుకుంటున్నావు? నీ డిజైన్ కావాలా. ఓకే, అర్థమైందా? సో నీ హౌస్ ఏ డిజైన్లో, ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ రెండు ఒక సింగిల్ బెడ్రూము, ఒక డబుల్ బెడ్రూము, ఒక బాత్రూము, ఒక కిచెన్, ఇది నీ డిజైన్. ఓకే, అర్థమైందా? నీ గోడలు ఎలా ఉండాలా, స్ట్రక్చర్ ఎలా ఉండాలా. సో హియర్ వాల్స్ అండ్ రూమ్స్. ఓకే, దట్ ఈస్ వన్ థింగ్. అండ్ నెక్స్ట్ ఇంకేం చూస్తావు? సో, నీకు అపియరెన్స్ నీ ఇల్లు ఎలా కనిపించాలా? అంటే
కలరు.
పెయింటింగ్స్. ఓకే. పెయింటింగ్స్. ఎలాంటి పెయింటింగ్స్ ఎయాలనుకుంటావు? ఓకే. పెయింటింగ్స్. పెయింటింగ్. సో, దాని తర్వాత సో, నీవు వాల్ కన్‌స్ట్రక్షను, రూమ్ కన్‌స్ట్రక్షను, పెయింటింగ్ అయిపోయింది. ఇంకేముంటాయి ఇంట్లో? హ్మ్. ఇంట్లో ఆ 2 ఉంటే సరిపోతాయా? వాల్స్, రూమ్స్ కట్టేసావు. పెయింటింగ్ కూడా చేసావు. మనీ ఉండాలా?
డోర్సు,
ఆ?
డోర్స్, కిటికీస్ అయింది.
అర్థం కాలా? డోర్స్, విండోస్ ఓకే. వాల్స్, రూమ్స్ వాటిలో అయి వచ్చేస్తాయి. అయి ఇంకేం కావాలా? హ్మ్? ఇంజినీర్స్ వేరే వాళ్ళని పెట్టుకునే కదంటారు చేస్తావా? వాల్స్, రూమ్స్, పెయింటింగ్ కూడా నువ్వేయవు కదా! వాళ్ళ మనుషులతో ఏదో ఏయిస్తావు. సో, ఇప్పుడు వాల్స్ అంటే గోడలు కట్టేసావు, రూములు కట్టావు, పెయింటింగ్ కూడా ఏసావు. అయుంటే ఇల్లు కంప్లీట్ అయిపోద్దా? ఆ? ఇంకేం పెడతావు ఇంట్లో? ఇప్పుడు కొత్త ఇల్లు కన్‌స్ట్రక్ట్ చేస్తున్నావు. ఈ కొత్త ఇల్లు కన్‌స్ట్రక్ట్ చేస్తున్నావు నువ్వు. సో, నువ్వు ఏం ఎక్స్‌పెక్ట్ చేస్తావు? నీ ఇంట్లో ఏం ఉండాలని? నార్మల్ జనరల్‌గా అడుగుతున్నా చెప్పండి. ఫర్నిచర్. ఓకే. సో, ఫర్నిచర్.
వైరింగ్.
హ్మ్. సో, ఎలక్ట్రిసిటీ. రైట్? ఎలక్ట్రిసిటీ మెయిన్ గదా! అండ్ హోమ్ అప్లయెన్సెస్. ఎలక్ట్రిసిటీ, ఎలక్ట్రిసిటీ అండ్ హోమ్ అప్లయెన్సెస్. కిచెన్‌లో ఏముండాలా? బెడ్‌రూమ్‌లో ఏముండాలా? ఓకే. ఇక్కడ స్విచ్ చేస్తే ఎక్కడ ఎలగాల? ఇట్లాంటివి. హోమ్ అప్లయెన్సెస్. సో, ఇలానే ఇక్కడ హియర్ హెచ్‌టీఎంఎల్ విల్ యాక్ట్ యాస్ walls and rooms. That is a structure. Okay. What is the structure you are going to build? Okay. That will decide through HTML. అర్థమైందా? సో, నీ కాంపోనెంట్ ఏ స్ట్రక్చర్‌లో ఉండాలా? దట్ విల్ బి డిసైడెడ్ త్రూ విచ్ వన్? HTML. And painting, right? So here painting will be decided. That is different types of colors. So here which one it will come? CSS. Okay. For your structure, what are the paintings, what are the colors that you need to add for your component? Okay. So here electricity and home appliances. So in this scenario, for example, if you switch on the particular area, so where it should light should on? Okay. Actions. Okay. Actions, some methods. So what should be there in the kitchen? Okay. What should be there in the bedroom? Okay. Those are the actions, right? So that will be done through JavaScript. JavaScript. అర్థమైందా? సో ఒక రియల్ టైమ్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఏంటంటే లెట్స్ టేక్ అన్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఆఫ్ హౌస్లో మనం ఒక స్ట్రక్చర్ బిల్డ్ చేస్తున్నాం. ఆ స్ట్రక్చర్ ఇస్ నథింగ్ బట్ హెచ్టిఎంఎల్. ఆ ఇంటికి మనం పెయింటింగ్ చేస్తున్నాం. సో ఇక్కడ హెచ్టిఎంఎల్ ఆ స్ట్రక్చర్కి సో మనకు ఏ టైప్ ఆఫ్ వ్యూలో కనిపించాలా? వాట్ ఆర్ ద కలర్స్ దట్ వీ నీడ్ టు యాడ్? దట్ కెన్ బి అచీవ్ త్రూ సిఎస్ఎస్. And what are the actions that you can perform within your home? Okay. Something. If you click on that particular switch, what should be? Light should on. Okay. If you go to the kitchen, something you need to do. Okay. If you go to the bedroom, something you need to do. Those are all the actions. That actions can be done by using JavaScript. Advainda? So these three are the main structure of LWC component. While creating LWC component, what at all it will create? HTML, JS, meta XML, CSS file. There are 4 files will be created. So interview question. Can you explain about LWC structure? So while creating a LWC component, by default it will create HTML, HTML file, JS file, meta XML file, CSS file. CSS file is, if it is required, you can add it, otherwise not optional. CSS is the optional. Okay, when you required, then only you can add CSS, otherwise that is not required. By default these three are important: HTML, JS, meta XML file. Okay, so here HTML will decide the structure of the component. Okay, how it will be. Okay, what are all the data that we need to display, that structure will decide through HTML. So what are the actions that we can perform, whether we are updating the data or fetching the data from database to show it in the HTML, that can be done through JS. And meta XML, meta XML file will have, here we have targets and configurations. So where we need to display this particular LWC, where we need to display, where we need to display the LWC component, that can be decided through meta XML file targets. Okay, there will be one attribute called targets. There you need to mention whether it is a home page, record page, home page or record page, or any quick action. Okay, through flow you need to use. So those kind of target names you need to mention in the meta XML file, so that it will be available in that respective area. Okay, అర్థమైందా? So here, so what are all the advantages of LWC? Faster performance, it uses modern JavaScript, easy to learn for web developers, better debugging, lightweight framework, better browser support, reusable components, improved security with Lightning Web Security. Lightning Web Security. So most of the new development will be done in LWC itself, like account management, any dashboard display, case management. If you want to display the data, you need to use LWC component. Okay. And then, so there is an interview question. What is the difference between ARA and LWC? Okay. Very, very important question. What is the difference between ARA and LWC? So feature wise we have, framework wise, ARA is a Salesforce proprietary. I mean, it will follow the Salesforce standards. So it has been built in Salesforce technology. Okay, it is not available in the outside. So it has to run multiple times. Okay, for a single line of code, it will, in the background, it will check the multiple subcodes. Okay, it will run it in the background. So that performance will be reduced. Okay, CPU time will take, CPU time also will take, consume more time. So that is the reason we recommended LWC. LWC uses web standards like HTML, JavaScript, CSS. Okay, and performance wise. So what is the framework? So in ARA we are using Salesforce proprietary, but in LWC we are using web standards. Like, so for ARA component, you need to mention always ARA component, ARA colon component. Then only you need to write a code. So that will run ARA framework within the Salesforce. Then only the code which you have written will be finally executed. But in terms of LWC, always it is a HTML tags. Okay. So just whatever the button you have written, that will run in the HTML itself, web standards. Okay, through web technologies, it will run, and also you will get the faster result. And performance wise, what is the performance? So performance of ARA is good, but LWC excellent. Okay, performance in the ARA component, when compared to ARA component, performance in the LWC is excellent. So you can able to learn easily LWC when compared to ARA. And here in LWC we are using modern JavaScript, but in ARA we are using old syntax. Okay. In terms of speed also, when compared to ARA, LWC is faster, and when compared to ARA, LWC we can able to debug easily, and also we can able to reusable the LWC component in excellent way when compared to ARA components. Okay. So for this ARA, always we need to mention ARA colon component. So inside this we need to mention the data. I mean UI values, whatever that we required. But in terms of LWC, always just it will call the button, lightning button. Okay, it won't use ARA framework. It will use the web standards. Okay. So LWC architecture, right? Already I told you. So browser architecture. Architecture. So here browser. Okay. Browser, from browser to, let me take with the example. So here, if this is the here browser, then is this LWC, and then it follows. So in the first, it is a browser. Okay. So from browser to, when we click on the, when we open the browser, okay, uh, it will go to, it will call the respective lightning web component. Okay, for example, if you are using lightning web component in the lightning record page, okay, either lightning record page or home page or record page, okay, or any quick action. So anywhere if you are referring the LWC component, first it will check the browser and the respective LWC component it will load. Okay, so here writing web component, So in this we have browser LWC component. In this LWC component we have three layers, right? So it will call the HTML as well as HTML, JS, JavaScript, CSS. Okay. So under this Lightning Web component we have three. HTML, CSS as well as JS. So then finally all these three we are coming to Salesforce database. Salesforce database. అర్థమైందా? So first when we click on the browser and when we open that particular web component, it will load the respective Lightning web component. In that Lightning web component we have HTML, JS file, CSS. Okay, that will load, and then if at all if we required any data from Salesforce, it will fetch from the Salesforce and show, or if you want to save some data, it will get the data from the UI and save it in the Salesforce database. So here this will be in both direction. Okay, this will be in both direction. So the UI data will be stored in the Salesforce database, as well as if you want to show the Salesforce data on the UI, you can able to fetch it from the Salesforce database and show it in the UI. Otherwise, this is the architecture of LWC. Okay, otherwise, so browser, LWC component, HTML, JS, GS, and then Apex controller and Salesforce database. So here Apex controller is nothing but here when you try to retrieve the data from database, or if you want to save the UI data to Salesforce, in between we have Apex controller, that is called Apex code. Okay, in between we have Apex code. So here I'm extending one more with Salesforce database. Here Apex controller. Okay, సో అర్థమైందా డిజైన్ ఆర్కిటెక్చర్ LWC ఆర్కిటెక్చర్ browser LWC component. In that LWC component we have HTML, JSS, CSS, JS, JavaScript as well as CSS files. From that, whether if you want to get the data from database, so through Apex controller you can get it, or if you want to save the data to the database through Apex controller, you can save the data to Salesforce database. Okay, this is the LWC architecture. Okay, so user opens the Lightning page, the browser loads the LWC, HTML displays the UI, JavaScript handles the user actions. Okay, what we need to perform. For example, by clicking on the save button, what should we do? That can be done through JavaScript. Okay, while clicking on the input field, what should be display? So those kind of JavaScript actions will be handled through JavaScript, and JavaScript calls the apex if server-side processing is needed. Okay, if so, can you explain about LWC flow? You need to explain about this thing. User opens the Lightning page, the browser loads the LWC component, and HTML displays the UI, JavaScript handles the user action, JavaScript calls the apex if server-side processing is needed. For example, if you want to get the data from Salesforce, we need to use apex, or if you want to save the data to the Salesforce database, you need to use apex in the JavaScript. Okay, సో అపెక్స్ క్వరీస్ ఆర్ అప్డేట్స్ ద సేల్స్ ఫోర్స్ డేటా. సో ఇక్కడ డేటాని నువ్వు జావా స్క్రిప్ట్ నుంచి అపెక్స్ పంపించినప్పుడు ఏమొస్తుంది, అపెక్స్ క్వరీ చేసి డిస్ప్లే చేయొచ్చు, లేకపోతే డేటాని అప్డేట్ చేయొచ్చు. ఓకే, డేటా ఈజ్ రిటర్న్ టు ద ఎల్డబ్ల్యూసి, ద యూఐ రిఫ్రెషెస్ ఆటోమేటికల్లీ. ఓకే, దిస్ ఈస్ ద ఫ్లో ఆఫ్ ఎల్డబ్ల్యూసి. ఓకే, ఎల్డబ్ల్యూసిలో బై డిఫాల్ట్ ఏముంటాయి? వెన్ యూ క్రియేట్ ఎల్డబ్ల్యూసి కాంపోనెంట్, it will create a HTML, JS, meta XML as well as CSS file. Okay, these are all the LWC architecture. Okay, so if you go here, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and then so always it will be js.meta XML file. Okay, js colon meta XML file. So already we discussed, right? HTML file is nothing but user interface. Okay, so what should be visible to the user, that is called HTML. అర్థమైందా? యూజర్కి ఫ్రంట్ ఎండ్లో ఏం కనిపిస్తుందో దట్ కెన్ బి అచీవ్డ్ త్రూ HTML file. Okay, creates the user interface. Okay, అర్థమైందా? And JavaScript file, what is the JavaScript file? It contains the components logic. For example, while clicking on the save button, what should happen? It will create a record in the backend, or by clicking on the particular button, get records, something button. So by clicking on that button, you need to get the records from the database and show it in the UI. Those kind of logics, user actions, okay, can be done in the JavaScript file. Okay, it brings the lightning element. Okay, extend means your component inherits all standard LWC features. ఇక్కడ మనకు ఇచ్చినాడు కదా, ఏం చెప్పాడు? lightning element is nothing but it's a by default base class. Okay, it's a base class for when you create any LWC component. By default it will be there, lightning, import lightning element from LWC, that will be there in the default. And here exports default class hello world extends lightning element. Extend means your component inherits all standard LWC features. So lightning element extends లో లైట్నింగ్ ఎలిమెంట్లో మనకు ఏవైతే ఫీచర్స్ ఉన్నాయో అవన్నిటిని మనం ఇక్కడ యూజ్ చేసుకోవచ్చని దాని అర్థం. ఓకేనా? సో ఎక్స్పోర్ట్ డిఫాల్ట్ మేక్స్ క్లాసెస్ అవైలబుల్ టు సేల్స్ ఫోర్స్. ఓకే, సేల్స్ ఫోర్స్లో ఈ క్లాస్ అనేది అవైలబుల్గా ఉందా, యూజ్ చేసుకోవచ్చా లేదా అనేది డిసైడ్ చేస్తుంది. ఓకేనా? సో అండ్ దెన్ CSS ఫైల్, వాట్ ఈస్ ద పర్పస్? యూ నీడ్ టు make it as a colors. For example, in your HTML page, when you are seeing the user, what kind of colors they need to apply for each. For example, for the save button, I need to show it as blue color. For the delete button, I need to show it as red color. Okay, those kind of For example, if I want to show some data which contains URL with a blue color, okay, those kind of colors we can able to achieve by this CSS file. So styles only this particular component, okay, అర్థమైందా? So then meta XML file, it defines where the component to be used. So whatever the component that you created, LWC component, where you want to display, whether you need to use that in home page or record page or quick action, is there any screen flow, so where you need to show where you need to use that particular LWC component, that can be decided through meta XML file, defines where the component can be used, okay. So here that XML file targets is there, right? Here lightning app page, lightning home page, lightning record page. We have other things also, like we can use it as a quick action, okay, or screen flow. So we have different types of targets, just I have mentioned only 3. You can refer, okay, where and all we can able to refer the LWC component, okay. So in the targets, what are all the other areas that we can able to use the LWC component, okay, it will be there. Check it in the documentation, okay. And then in the meta XML file we have ease export, right? So if you make this as true, then only it will be visible in your app builder, okay, otherwise it will not be available. You cannot able to see that particular LWC component, అర్థమైందా? So target specify where it can be placed, whether if you want to place it in home page or app page or record page, okay. So these and all the introduction of LWC components, okay. So మనం ఏం చేద్దామంటే, I will create one LWC component, we will show it in the one of the page within the Salesforce, okay. అర్థమైందా? So now what I will do, I will create a one HTML, one LWC component, hello world. So for this you have installed, right? So VS Code install చేస్తున్నారు కదా మీరు, okay. So okay, so I am using another way, okay. So there is a one extension called Lightning Studio, okay. There is one extension called Lightning Studio. If you open this, so it will connect to, it will be connected to the respective Salesforce arc. Here you can able to create a Lightning web component, okay. So click on this new Lightning web component, okay. What is the component name? Hello world. So it won't, and also you need to maintain the naming convention. So always it will start with lowercase, okay. Always component name, always it will take it as lower case. It will follow the camel cases, okay. Lightning naming convention, it will follow the camel cases. For example, hello world, world is the capital letter, okay. So here while creating, it will ask is exposed, okay, that is the one thing, okay. And then I'm making it as is exposed, as well as if required you can include CSS file. Right now I'm not required, so I'm not taking anything here. In the targets, where you need to display this one. Either see targets we have, right, different things. Lightning app page, lightning home